LV55 Media, LLC presents the Heroes of Montford Point interview series featuring Montford Point Marine Ambassador Theodore Britton, Jr., hosted by Patricia Williams.
Ambassador, first I'd like to say thank you so very much for sitting down with us for this interview. And also I'd like to say thank you for serving our country.
Well, thank you for this time with you and this wonderful group of your colleagues here.
Thank you. Now you were one of the original Montford Point
Did you say
Marines.
were?
Are. You
Thank
are.
Thank you.
Always a Marine.
I'm getting old, but not ready yet.
You are one of the original ones.
Yes, ma'am.
What? Tell me what led you to join, or did you enlist, or were you?
I did. Actually, I was offered the Army or the Navy, and I declined. And after they stopped regarding me as a wise person, wise guy, then they found a space for me in the Marine Corps.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I just felt it was something new, so I wanted to try it.
So what type of things did you encounter while at Montford Point?
I was trained, and I've had a great deal of time to reflect on it because by the way, I was just about 6 or 8 years out of the South, and I thought later on of many of the fellows coming in from the South who had been deferential, who had been soft-spoken, their eyes lowered and whatever, and suddenly they were called upon to stand erect, to look a person directly in the eye, to speak authoritatively, and to and generally to handle themselves, with a lot, and to speak loudly and so forth. But they learned to be an entirely different group of people. I just took it for granted because for some reason I was always maybe always a little bit beyond the group. When I went to New York from South Carolina, I was already in the 7th grade, although I was 10 years old, and they put me back to 4th grade, saying that
Wow.
children from the South weren't as smart as those from the North. So I spent my life maybe proving to people that I'm really a little bit smarter than they may think I am.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow, so that's why you've advanced so far in your
It's preparation
career in
and
life.
opportunity. A lot of opportunities come to people in life for which they're unprepared. Then I've had the benefit of some good experience. For example, my high school teacher was a graduate of Princeton University, Phi Beta Kappa, studied under Woodrow Wilson. He said from the day I first met him, "Britton, I would like you to be a gentleman and a scholar." He never asked me what I wanted to be, but for the other 3.5 years I was with him, he always emphasized that. And in a sense, I always felt that I was forced to kind of live up to it. I would say also that I was introduced to a book on Guadalcanal, my first overseas assignment. It was called Give Yourself Background by F. Fraser Bond. I recommend that book to all young people because it tells so much, although it was first published in 1938 and 1942. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, very nice. What was one of your most memorable experiences there, whether it was positive or negative?
In the Marine Corps?
Yes.
I guess it was a series of things. Now, being in Guadalcanal, we were behind the front lines, and we were in charge of supply, and so we had all kinds of supplies coming in, particularly educational things, and I made it my business to get everything that came in was educational, to read it. In addition, I roomed with medical corpsmen who were some of the better trained men in the outfit, college graduates and whatever, and they were speaking a terminology that I'd never heard before. When they started speaking about subjects like acetylsalicylic acid, which is aspirin, they had me. But in addition, my officers were very supportive too, because any questions I asked them, they answered, and they knew that I was very studious. In Hawaii, it was the same way. I got to know a lot about the Hawaiian people, and I studied a lot of the history of the island and so forth. But wherever wherever I was assigned, I made it my business to start learning as much as I could about the environment. I would also say that while there, I began reading about Ralph Bunche, and that inspired me to think in terms of diplomacy. Later, watching the formation of the United Nations added to it. He was involved in it. Mhm.
Ambassador, did you personally encounter a lot of racism while you were at the camp?
No. I think my term at camp at Montford Point was rather short. I came in at the end of January, was trained, went into school, and from there shipped out on July 3rd, 1944. So I didn't experience any of that. Now, I was born in the South, South Carolina.
Okay.
But even then, I didn't really experience any overt. I think I had one of these non-threatening personalities where people always kind of, they could either tolerate me or not be afraid of me or something. And so I was not subject to any abuse or anything like that. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the length of time or the amount of time that it's taken to receive the recognition or to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor?
I can understand it. We did not have the stars that were in the Navy. For example, the Navy, the famous 13 officers included people such as Carl Rowan. The Tuskegee Airmen included General Davis. Now, at the time that the World War II began, there were two active duty officers, Colonel Benjamin O. Davis Jr. and his son, Captain Benjamin O. Davis Jr. Senior and Junior. And so Captain Davis, who was the 1936 graduate of West Point, went on to become a high-ranking officer. As a matter of fact, by all odds, he should have been 4 stars during World War II. But President Clinton gave him his 4th star before he died. In thinking about it, I recognized that there were so many people who stood out, whereas Marine Corps, by its own admissions, it tended to sublimate us to everything else and didn't give very much publicity to the contributions. There were something like 19,168 of us, men whose lives were changed, whose personalities were changed and whatever, going back to the South and the North and so forth.
Ambassador, tell me, what would you like the general public, or more specifically young people, to know about what the Montford Point Marines did during that era?
I would like to know that a new breed of African-American men was created. Men who came out of the South, as I said before, who would have been a very deferential type of person, but came out as a more organized, physically fit, upstanding, erect person who was not afraid to look anybody in the eye and speak up. Now, there's an old phrase about if you see a bumblebee, ignore that bumblebee. He'll do nothing, but don't mess with a bunch of hornets. One of the men in my chapter, who was a Montford Point Marine, was walking into one of the malls one day, and he saw another person coming out. And he yelled, "Hey, Marine." And that person said, "Well, I am." He said, "But how did you recognize him?" "How did you recognize him?" He said, "It was the way you walked." Montford Point Marines walked with a certain amount of confidence. And that's something that ought to be inculcated into all of the young people of the day, so that they walk with a degree of confidence, they dress appropriately. We were very proud of our uniforms. I didn't wear the dress blues, but when you see our folks in the dress blues, you know how proud they are to be wearing it. Well, you compare that with some of the attire you see on some of the young folks these days, including the shag, the sagging, and that kind of business. And it's entirely different. It's a sort of a mothering institution But it's a good one because people kind of come out of it as really upstanding young citizens here.
Mhm.
That would be the legacy I would hope would pass on to the young folks here.
Absolutely. A great
Mhm.
legacy.
Mhm.
One final question for you. How do you feel about the vessel that's going to be launched this weekend? The one that's the what is it? The USNS?
U.S. Navy ship, Montford Point.
Yes.
I guess what's most significant to me, and by the way, I've gotten to know the Secretary of the Navy, who's a wonderful person, as opposed to his predecessor when we first went in the Marine Corps. Secretary was from Kentucky. Secretary Mavis. Mavis was the former governor of Mississippi, but a wonderful person.
Oh,
Yeah. This is a new class of vessel, entirely new. And so the first one is to be dedicated to us, the next one to John Glenn, the astronaut, senator, and the third one to the most decorated officer in the U.S. Marine Corps.
Hmm.
So in this case, this vessel is not just a token that you just pick a ship and say, we'll name it. This is a very significant one, the first ever in its class. So it can make us feel that it's something very special. By the way, there's something like 36 of us will be there out of the 20,000 of us who trained at Montford Point here.
Wow.
Mhm. So it can make you feel very proud of it.
Very proud.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, we're planning to be there as well. And
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Yes.
Mhm.
thank you so very much again for the interview.
You can keep the cheering down to a low roar. I mean, thank you anyway. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
Special thanks to Jimmy Michael Truitt and the National Montford Point Marine Association. This episode was recorded on location at the Four Points by Sheridan, San Diego, California, on February 28, 2013.